Are you wondering how AI will have an effect on the workplace? How will it change your day-to-day job? Well, stay tuned for this episode of the iTech Insights podcast, where I get to talk with Vikram, who works in AI, helping businesses implement it every day. So stay tuned. Hey, Vikram.
Raya, thank you for
Yeah,
having me.
thanks for spending some time with me. We're over here at the Moveworks Global Conference in San Jose, and a big event coming up. And so I want to thank you again just for spending a little bit of time chatting a little bit about what we see around um, artificial intelligence, how it's affecting the workplace now, and maybe how it might affect it in the future.
Yeah,
But first, why don't you just tell me a little bit about yourself?
yeah, absolutely. My name is Vikram Podar. I find myself very fortunate to be in the thick of AI and all things around how enterprises are deploying generative AI solutions at their enterprises to solve employee productivity, build cutting edge use cases that can help automate their day-to-day tasks and ultimately do good at what is it they're trying to solve for. So I'm very excited to talk to you about AI, my experience on how is it that I find myself in sitting in front of you and talking to you, as well as things I'm excited for in the future.
Oh, cool. Well, tell me a little bit about your background. Like, where did you go to school at?
Absolutely. I did my graduate studies at Pennsylvania State University, where I had the good fortune of learning about machine learning, computer vision, and AI.
Mm.
I joined a fast, high tech startup in the thick of Silicon Valley, and where we were employing or as well as deploying natural language understanding to understand the intent of users and what is it that they're trying to ask and the underlying um, business process or system that they wanted to make the machine solve for it. And right in the middle of my career, there's been a lot of movement and advancements in this space, particularly with large language models and generative AI. And now we're really understanding how this is being used and the future of deploying it more, uh, making it more a part of your day to day.
Mm. Yeah, that's really interesting. You're as a working on the implementation projects. Like, what have you seen customer, how people using AI in your own experience?
Yeah. Well, so as in really in implementation, I we try to curate specific use cases so as to narrow down the problem areas to start with.
Mm-hmm.
As you can imagine, there are plenty of problems and challenges that you want to solve for, but how is it that we can deploy a proof of concept on things that are, you know, uh, top of mind, but also have high value in terms of how common it is. And once you do identify the end systems that you want to target, how is it that users can prompt and
Mm.
make the machine do the action that it would you would like it to do, to then go through a more robust change management process so an organization would feel comfortable to open it up for all of their employee base to then try and use that in their day-to-day workflows.
Yeah, it's a big, it's a big thing. Trusting AI. A lot of people they're like, well, I don't trust the computers. They're going to take over or something. So,
Absolutely.
that's one of the challenges. That I see that people may be hesitant to move into that space to see if it's really going to do what it's said to do. Um, you have any, suggestions on how to overcome the fear of AI?
I was actually gonna ask you that question on how, for me, it is. I think AI is, is it's straightforward in the sense that you know what is it that you wanted to do, the underlying business problem or use case you're trying to solve for. The beauty of AI is it will try and figure out the best way to do that said action based on the information it may or may not have, and try and piece those together. So I feel very comfortable, on putting forth those use cases to you. But I would be curious on how is it that you can take that to socialize this within, your team, and then the C-suite, so as to make them feel more comfortable with employing that.
Yeah, I heard this funny story, and I think it was a true story that someone implemented AI in their business, and it was a support chatbot, and the person asked, instead of requesting an order, they said, "Oh, would you like to donate to our charity group?"
Yeah.
And the AI said, "Oh, I'd love to donate to your charity group." And they said, "How much do you want us to donate?" And then the person responded like, "Oh, can you send us 10,000 pounds?" And the AI is like, "Sure, I'll send you 10,000 pounds." Now
Sounds reasonable.
it didn't have like banking information to send the 10,000 pounds to them, but AI was thinking for itself, like, "Hey, charity, this is a good idea. Like, sure, I want to donate money to you."
Yeah.
But it wasn't really authorized to do that type
Right.
of donation. The company ended up just did donating money to that charity, just not that amount. But anyways,
Right.
that was kind of funny about trusting AI.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you have to, especially for people who are not technical, you have to uh, show them the use case at a smaller scale. Like, hey, look, it can do this, and then if it does that well, and then you can go a little bit further, like, oh, I think we can expand to this. And really, what's happening is that it, for companies, they're worried about protecting their data, and
Right.
because they don't know what AI is going to do with their data, they think maybe it's going to spew it all over the web or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So especially with companies like Google or Microsoft, you can really get down to the details of like, okay, where does my data go when
Sure.
AI is reading your files? And a lot of times, though, they say that that data stays within your tenant; it doesn't leave it. That data is not used to train their models, and that's why there's so much free AI out there, because that's where the training is coming from the free use. But the actual paying customers, their data stays safe within that enclave of their tenant.
Right.
So explaining that to leadership and showing them the privacy um, terms and everything will kind of help them, like, okay, like, so my data is safe. At least if you trust Google
Right.
with your data already, and then you trust Google's AI, then that gives them a little bit more confidence. Like, okay, like, I'll trust Google, but maybe they may not trust the other AIs like DeepSeek or other things like that.
Sure.
So it depends on what AI you're using to build that trust.
Yeah. I think you were definitely right in terms of what is AI, or what are these machine learning models using to train and become smarter. Um, I think traditionally what we've learned about machine learning is you feed it data, it trains itself on that set data to then produce some outputs that you can then correlate and be like, yes, that makes sense, because based on what is it that I'm feeding that model input, the output it chives with what is it that I would want it to do. Um, I think more what we're noticing with these large language models is customers don't need to provide their data to train that said model.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the guardrails that we traditionally had in place around data masking, using some sort of PII frameworks around making sure sensitive information or are not leaked into the or crept into the model
Right.
itself,
Mm-hmm.
I think is not really relevant in today's conversation,
Mm.
since these models have um, so much more um, information, or we have these things called like 80 billion parameter models. These are not things that you would use as if you were deploying this in-house, right,
Mm-hmm.
you would want to train it on your data.
Tell me a little bit about explain what that is. That 80 billion. You
Right.
know.
I think the best way to think of it is you uh, in the vast scheme or grand scheme of things, there are a lot of points about, or instead of saying data points, it's more like domains of things, or nature of concepts,
Mm-hmm.
and each parameter could be defined as a lever that you can use, like a nuts and bolts on, you know I would like to amplify the color green versus, uh, you know, the sound of rain,
Hmm.
which is one parameter versus the other. Um,
So the AI has like 80 billion of these different levers it can turn,
yeah, that's one way to think of it.
and they're like all connected and stuff. So that's
Well, I think we're still trying to really figure that out. Um, there is a lot of evaluation that's been done around, you know, if you've heard of this term called, we hear LLMs all around, but there's
right.
also something called SLMs, or uh, yeah, I also believe there's something called MLMs, which is like
Hmm.
small language models, and then you have micro language models. So
Hmm.
how is it that you can identify which model would make the most sense for your business need? And it might not be a one size fit all. So there's a lot of work that I think people are still trying to figure out is, do I really need this 80 billion parameter model?
Hmm.
I would, most likely think probably not. I don't think I'm solving something which is computationally requires so
Right.
many, different, you know, ways to, make it work. So I think there's a lot still trying to
Yeah.
figure that out.
Why use a sledgehammer when you need a small hammer? You know.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's a good point. So Vikram, where do you see like AI going in the next 2, 3 years down the road, even down to 5 years?
Right. So I think we're going to notice a lot of companies produce their own uh, models. So, um, different versions of their, models to curate for different, business use cases, or domains that they find themselves to be uh, very proficient at. What I
Hmm.
mean by that is, uh, Facebook might produce a model which is very great at video, versus
Hmm.
Google that might produce something that's great at audio. But more broadly speaking, what is it that um, you can employ around evaluating which model would meet your business use case,
Right.
is an area that companies are going to try to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Second could be around benchmarking them. So how is it that you can observe the uh, the use case or the input versus the output that you desire? So some sort of benchmarking and
Mm.
observability. And finally, once you identify the end-to-end use case, to deploy it into production, and to be able to then steer it if it was not performing the way you do want to. So it's almost a circle, or a feedback loop or mechanism
Mm.
that's continuous and self-improving, with human in the loop as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what you think about. Well, it's like specialized AIs, and then we'll benchmark them to each other. Like which ones are the best one? Like, oh, these are the good ones. Like, okay, let's implement this.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of along your thoughts, I kind of see something very similar like that. Is that we would be managing a team of AI agents, or AI. They might even be avatars at that point.
Right.
And it might even be in like the org structure. Like all right, Vikram, you have like three AI, agents, and you name them
Who are
different
like
names.
working on behalf of me.
Yeah, working on
Yeah.
behalf, and you're like their supervisor. You're just like, okay, let me just make
And
sure
each
you're
of them
doing it
have their own niche as well.
right.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. Just like humans right now, you have certain people on your team. I have certain people on my team that do, they work on this, and this one's really good at this, or this one's
Right.
really good. And you know, for the which job, you know which one to send it to.
Yeah.
So I think the AIs will get to that
And I'm
point.
sure there'll be like one AI that will actually do the part of designating the work based
Yeah.
on the things that are coming through it. So agreed. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of levels that you can almost bake in to
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
make
I
that
heard
happen.
I heard of a lot of AIs. The support cases where the AI is actually reading the request that comes in,
Mm-hmm.
and based off what it reads, it then vectors that to whatever area that it needs to go to, or whatever inbox or person it needs to assign to. So it's already doing that. It's just going through reading it. So you don't need like someone to read the queue anymore. It's
Sure.
automatically done for you.
Yeah.
So I guess see, it's just little bits getting added on to each other as they go on. It's really fascinating. I really see that.
A lot of like specifically talking about like your IT service management, there's so many fields or meta information that uh, the system already has in store. What I mean by that is, the ticket, goes to this queue, so you already can, curate an agent that's, you know, specialized on account recovery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's easier to build an AI agent to do one task versus a catch-all agent to
Mm.
do everything.
Yeah, I see what you're
So
saying.
I think the same you know um, modus operandi for deploying agents should be identify a low-hanging fruit that can be quickly automated, so to see results,
Right.
so build that intuition, identify edge cases, show value, and then socialize it enough that people want to take that same model and deploy it to solve their business need,
Mm-hmm.
and then make it more self-sufficient, as opposed to someone having to do that for multitude of use cases that might fall outside of their domain expertise.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually doing that now. Like I'm sharing with what we're doing on my team with
Right.
other departments, and they're like, "Oh, it could do that." Like, "Oh, help me with that. I want that too." So it's pretty interesting that how we're just automating a lot of these things using the AIs that that we don't there's a lot of repetitive things that we don't want to keep on doing with our time. We could be doing other things. So
How is AI? How are you using AI right now?
well, for like our ticketing right now,
Okay.
um, it's responding to all the tickets, and I'm excited that it's going to have um, the what do they call it, interception, where it's going to read all the tickets that come through, and it's going to try to solve it. And if it can't solve it, then I'll leave it for a human agent to work on. But yeah, it's looking at all our tickets, and I realized how important it was to us is that when's it working right, when's it updating the tickets, and then we're like, oh no, like what are we going to do? Like the bot's not updating tickets. What where is
Yeah.
it at and stuff. So that's when I realized how important it was. It was when's it working right. It was like, oh wait, we need to get this working right away, and so yeah, I think that's one use case. There's plenty of other use cases I see coming up, like financial planning that's coming up. Looking at data analytics of your past, your past revenue or sales and stuff, and it's
Sure.
like projecting going forward. Um, and so there's as in security you can do like fraud detection or looking at anomalies. There's another company that I was been in contact with called Mixed Mode, and they're uh, they're doing that same thing, looking at network traffic and look for
Okay.
anomalies in it to detect any kind of security events that are happening. And so yeah, there's plenty of use cases. Um, so Vikram, thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah.
So if someone was interested in getting into AI, like what kind of advice would you have? Like if let's say I wanted to get and be you one day.
Well, I think that's a. Um, Thank you for asking that question. I think there's not one set of way to get into this space, which is great because there's I think the short of it, or the way I like to think of it is, if you're currently working at an organization, there is a lot of room to start using AI as part of your day-to-day activities and your broader team and company goals. So how is it that you can start using and tinkering with AI as part of your day-to-day? So that's a great way to start if you're already at an organization and working full time. Introducing AI, everyone loves a go-getter or a self-starter, and trying to adopt AI at your team or organization would be a great way. If you're still early in your career, in school, I think time is your a luxury, and you're blessed to be have more free time to you know go through more curated study modules and courses that are available. And uh, I think the barrier to entry is decreasing to get into this space, which is great. I think there are a lot of opportunities in terms of um, you know if you really think of it, there's always the aspect of research and development, and then there's more about practical application. So I think figuring out which one do you want to fall under would dictate how you would like to approach it. I think for I can personally speak more on would be on the application side as opposed to more on the R&D section.
Right.
I think there's a lot of great practical day to day ways to use it. I'm happy to speak more about that.
Yeah, that's the area that I'm actually most interested in, the actual application of it.
Right.
Like, okay, these very smart people built this thing. Like, okay, but now how can we use it? How can we use it in our day-to-day lives?
Yeah.
How can we use it to improve things?
Right.
So that's what I'm the most interested in with AI. Well, Vikram, I really appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us, and hopefully people find this of value, listening to this,
Yeah.
and I really looking forward to seeing where your career takes you, maybe in 3 to 5 years, and seeing what happens there. And this is our first time doing it in person, so this is great to
Yeah.
see this, and so thank you, and
No, all right. Thank you. That was a pleasure, and happy to chat AI and then learn. And I think there's a lot more to just read about. It comes out every day, and so excited to just see us reconnecting at a future date and maybe picking things up from where we left off.